Stop everything you're doing right now. What you're about to learn has been hidden from humanity for over 2,000 years. Imagine discovering an ancient manuscript so powerful that those who truly understand it claim it can guide your consciousness through the moment of death itself. Not just describe it, guide you through it. This isn't speculation. This isn't religion. This is a detailed map of what happens in the exact moment your heart stops beating. A map so precise that modern science is only now beginning to confirm its accuracy. Think about this for a moment. Despite all our technological advances, despite all our medical breakthroughs, we still can't answer humanity's most burning question. What really happens when we die? But what if I told you that a secret group of Tibetan masters had already solved this mystery centuries ago? They left behind a manuscript so controversial, so profound, that for centuries it was only passed down from teacher to student in absolute secrecy. Why? Because this isn't just a book about death. It's a precise manual for navigating the space between this life and the next. A space they call the Bardo. But here's where things get even more extraordinary. Modern neuroscience is finding striking similarities between what this ancient text describes and what people report during near-death experiences. The same patterns, the same stages, the same transformative moments. And here's the most shocking part. This manuscript claims that the moment of death isn't the end. Instead, it's the most powerful opportunity for enlightenment we'll ever encounter. But there's a catch, and it's a big one. If you're not prepared for what you'll experience in that moment, you risk becoming trapped in cycles of confusion that could last for lifetimes. Today, you're going to learn exactly what these ancient masters discovered. You'll understand why some of the world's leading scientists are now studying this text. And most importantly, you'll learn what really happens in those crucial moments after your final breath. But I have to warn you, once you understand these truths, you'll never see life or death the same way again. Are you ready to uncover what might be humanity's greatest secret? The manuscript is called the Tibetan Book of the Dead, but that name doesn't even begin to capture what it really is. Because this isn't just a book about dying, it's a detailed manual for the most important journey your consciousness will ever take. And in the next few minutes, you're going to learn exactly why this ancient wisdom could change everything we thought we knew about the nature of human consciousness itself. But first, we need to understand how this mysterious text survived centuries of suppression to finally reach the modern world. Because its journey from the hidden monasteries of Tibet to the laboratories of modern science is almost as extraordinary as its contents. Imagine being in a modern hospital's intensive care unit. The steady beep of heart monitors fills the air. A patient's heart suddenly stops, clinically dead, but minutes later they return to life with an extraordinary story, one that matches, with stunning precision, a text written over 1,000 years before modern medicine existed. This isn't just happening once or twice. Thousands of documented near-death experiences across different cultures, different religions, in different parts of the world are telling us the same story. A story that mirrors exactly what the Tibetan Book of the Dead described centuries ago. Let me share something that might shock you. In 2014, researchers at the University of Southampton completed the largest ever medical study of near-death experiences. They studied over 2,000 cardiac arrest survivors across 15 hospitals. What they found sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Nearly 40% of survivors described experiences of consciousness while clinically dead. But here's what's truly extraordinary. Many reported floating above their bodies, watching medical staff work on them, and later could accurately describe what happened during their resuscitation. But how is this possible when their brains showed no measurable activity? This is where the ancient wisdom of the Tibetan Book of the Dead becomes impossible to ignore, because it tells us something revolutionary. Consciousness doesn't end when the brain stops functioning. Instead, it enters what Tibetan masters call the Bardo of death, a state of pure awareness beyond physical existence. Think about this. Modern neuroscience is discovering that consciousness might not be produced by the brain at all. What if the brain is more like a receiver, picking up consciousness the way a radio picks up radio waves? This would explain why people can remain aware even when their brain shows no activity. Dr. Sam Parnia, Director of Critical Care and Resuscitation Research at NYU Langone School of Medicine, has spent decades studying what happens to consciousness when we die. His research suggests that people can remain conscious for minutes or even hours after clinical death. But here's the fascinating part. Their experiences often follow the exact stages described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Now you might be thinking, this sounds incredible, but what does it mean for me? The implications are staggering. If consciousness continues after death, if we remain aware during this transition, then how we prepare for this moment becomes crucial. It's like preparing for the most important journey you'll ever take. But this is just the beginning of what modern science is discovering. Because the Tibetan Book of the Dead doesn't just tell us that consciousness continues, it maps out exactly what happens next. It describes a sequence of experiences so precise, so detailed, that it's revolutionizing our understanding of what it means to be conscious. And this brings us to perhaps the most extraordinary discovery of all. Scientists studying the effects of psychedelics on the dying process have found something remarkable. The experiences reported by participants in these studies match, with uncanny accuracy, the stages of consciousness described in this ancient manuscript. But to understand why this is so significant, we need to go back to where this knowledge first emerged. Picture yourself in the snow-capped mountains of Tibet over 1,000 years ago. A group of master meditators have discovered something that will change our understanding of death forever. But the story of how this knowledge was preserved and transmitted through the centuries is almost as extraordinary as the knowledge itself. High in the forbidden valleys of Tibet, where the air is so thin it makes breathing difficult, an extraordinary story began to unfold. In the 8th century, at a time when Europe was still in the Dark Ages, a mysterious figure arrived in Tibet, a master known as Padmasambhava, the Lotus-born. What he brought with him would change the course of human understanding about death itself. But here's something most people don't know. The Tibetan Book of the Dead wasn't meant to be written down at all. Padmasambhava knew these teachings were too powerful, too profound for the people of his time, so he did something remarkable. He encoded these sacred instructions into the landscape itself, hiding them in caves, valleys, and even in the minds of future disciples who would be born at the right time to discover them. Think about this for a moment. For centuries, these teachings remained hidden, protected by the most sophisticated preservation system ever devised. They were called terma, spiritual time capsules waiting for the perfect moment to be discovered. And here's where it gets even more fascinating. The manuscripts were only part of the transmission. The consciousness of the teaching itself was said to be preserved in the mind stream of specially prepared individuals who would be reborn to find these texts. Now fast forward to the 14th century. A Tibetan master named Karma Lingpa, at just 15 years old, discovered these hidden teachings in the Gampo Mountains. But discovering the text was only the beginning. Understanding it required years of intense meditation, guidance from realized masters, and a complete dedication to unlocking its deeper meanings. What makes this text so extraordinary isn't just its age or its method of preservation. It's the fact that it addresses the one experience every single human being will face, death. And it does so with a level of precision and detail that still astounds scholars today. When this text finally reached the West in the early 20th century, it caught the attention of Carl Jung, one of the founding fathers of modern psychology. Jung didn't see it as just another religious text. He recognized it as a sophisticated map of human consciousness, one that perfectly described the stages of psychological dissolution that occur at death. But here's what makes this even more relevant to you. The Tibetan Book of the Dead isn't just about what happens after we die. It's a manual for understanding the nature of mind itself. Every single teaching it contains can be applied to the challenges and transitions we face in our daily lives. And this brings us to the most crucial part of the story. The text describes something that modern science is only beginning to understand: the existence of different levels of consciousness, each one more subtle than the last. These aren't just theoretical concepts. They're experiential realities that every human being encounters, whether they're aware of it or not. As we delve deeper into these teachings, you're about to discover what happens in that crucial moment when consciousness begins to separate from the body. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes this process in such precise detail that even modern hospice workers are now studying its wisdom to better understand what their patients experience. But before we explore these stages, you need to understand something crucial. What you're about to learn isn't just ancient theory. It's a practical guide for the most important journey your consciousness will ever take, and it begins with something the Tibetans call the clear light, a phenomenon so profound that recognizing it could mean the difference between liberation and continued cycles of existence. Imagine this. In the final moment of your life, as your last breath leaves your body, something extraordinary happens. Instead of darkness, you experience a light so brilliant, so all-encompassing, that it defies description. This isn't just any light. It's what Tibetan masters call the clear light of pure awareness, the most profound moment any human being can experience. In this pivotal instant, as your heart takes its final beat, the Tibetan Book of the Dead describes something revolutionary. Your consciousness doesn't diminish, it expands. Every limitation falls away. Every boundary dissolves. You're faced with the ultimate nature of reality itself, pure and unfiltered. Think about this. Your entire life, your consciousness has been like a light bulb, illuminating your experiences. But in this moment, it becomes like the sun itself, boundless, brilliant, all-encompassing. This is why the ancient texts say this moment contains the greatest opportunity for enlightenment any being can encounter. Modern neuroscience is discovering something fascinating about this experience. When studying the brains of dying patients, researchers have detected a surge of electrical activity in the moment of death. A final burst of consciousness more intense than anything experienced in normal waking life. Could this be what the Tibetan masters were describing thousands of years ago? But here's where things become crucial. The Tibetan Book of the Dead warns that this moment is as fleeting as it is powerful. Like a flash of lightning in the night sky, it illuminates everything for an instant. And in that instant, you have a choice, though most aren't prepared to recognize it as such. Why aren't we prepared? Because we've spent our entire lives identifying with our thoughts, our emotions, our personal story. But in this moment, all of that falls away. You're faced with consciousness in its pure form. Imagine trying to recognize your own face if you'd never seen a mirror. That's the challenge this moment presents. This is why the Tibetan Book of the Dead isn't just a guide for the dying, it's a manual for living. Because this same clear light, this same pure awareness, is present in every moment of your life. It's just usually hidden behind the constant stream of thoughts, emotions, and sensory experiences that make up our daily existence. The text describes specific practices, techniques for recognizing this clear light in life. Every time you meditate, every moment of pure awareness, every experience of profound clarity, these are like rehearsals for the ultimate moment. This is why longtime meditators often report experiencing this light in deep practice, catching glimpses of what awaits all of us. But what happens if you miss this opportunity? What if the clear light is too overwhelming, too unfamiliar to recognize? This is where the journey through the Bardos truly begins. Because what comes next is even more extraordinary. A sequence of experiences so profound that they've been kept secret for centuries. As the clear light fades, if you haven't recognized it, your consciousness enters what's called the Secondary Bardo, a realm where the contents of your own mind begin to take form around you. Imagine every thought, every emotion, every deep-seated belief manifesting as vivid, living experiences. This is where the real challenges begin. But before we explore these remarkable visions, you need to understand something crucial about their nature. Because what the Tibetan Book of the Dead reveals about these experiences isn't just a description of what happens after death. It's a profound insight into the very nature of reality itself. And what you're about to learn might completely transform how you understand your own consciousness. Imagine standing in the most vivid dream you've ever experienced. The clear light has faded, and now reality itself begins to transform around you. You're entering what the Tibetan Book of the Dead calls the Secondary Bardo, a realm where the deepest contents of your consciousness take form. But what happens next challenges everything we think we know about the nature of reality and mind. In this extraordinary state, you encounter something unprecedented. Brilliant figures of light, divine beings radiating peace and wisdom. These aren't just vague visions. The text describes them with incredible precision. Peaceful deities emanating five-colored lights, each representing a different aspect of enlightened wisdom. But here's the revolutionary truth. These beings aren't external gods or angels. They're manifestations of your own enlightened nature. Think about this. Every quality of enlightenment, wisdom, compassion, clarity, effectiveness, spaciousness, exists within you right now. In the Secondary Bardo, these qualities appear as radiant beings of light. It's as if your highest potential takes form before your eyes, offering a chance for recognition and liberation. This is where Carl Jung's insights become fascinating. Jung saw these peaceful deities as archetypes, universal patterns in the human psyche. When you encounter the Buddha of infinite light, you're meeting your own capacity for boundless awareness. When you see the Buddha of unshakable ground, you're facing your own inner stability. These aren't just poetic metaphors, they're glimpses of your true nature. But here's where the journey becomes challenging. If you can't recognize these peaceful manifestations as aspects of your own mind, something profound happens. The visions begin to shift. The peaceful deities transform into what the text calls wrathful deities, powerful, fierce beings that can seem terrifying at first glance. Now, here's what makes this text so extraordinary. It explains that these wrathful deities are exactly the same enlightened energies as the peaceful ones. They're just appearing in a more dynamic, intense form. Imagine water appearing as both a serene lake and a powerful waterfall. Same essence, different expression. This insight isn't just about after-death experiences. Think about how emotions appear in your daily life. Love can be gentle and nurturing, or it can be fierce and protective. Wisdom can appear as peaceful clarity or as penetrating insight that cuts through delusion. These are the same energies the Tibetan Book of the Dead describes, just on a more profound scale. Modern neuroscience and psychology are finding fascinating parallels to these teachings. Research into non-ordinary states of consciousness shows that when the brain's default mode network quiets down, people often experience similar visions of archetypal beings and profound insights. It's as if these experiences are built into the very structure of human consciousness. The text offers specific guidance for this stage. Remain calm, recognize everything you see as projections of your own mind, and don't react with attraction or aversion. This isn't just advice for the after-death state. It's profound wisdom for dealing with any challenging experience in life. Every difficult emotion, every challenging situation is an opportunity to recognize its essential nature. But what happens if you can't maintain this recognition? What if the intensity of these experiences becomes overwhelming? This is where the journey through the Bardos takes an even more extraordinary turn. Because what comes next reveals something profound about the nature of reality itself and how our consciousness creates the world we experience. As the peaceful and wrathful visions fade, if you haven't recognized their true nature, your consciousness begins to enter even subtler states. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes what happens next in such precise detail that it leaves no doubt. This isn't just poetry or metaphor. It's a precise map of consciousness itself, revealing stage by stage how our experience of reality manifests. But before we explore these deeper stages, you need to understand something crucial about the nature of mind itself. Because what the text reveals next isn't just about what happens after death, it's about how your consciousness is creating your reality right now, in this very moment. Imagine floating in a vast ocean of consciousness, where every thought, every intention, every unresolved emotion creates ripples that shape your future existence. This is where the Tibetan Book of the Dead takes us next, into the final and perhaps most crucial stage of the death process, the Bardo of becoming. What happens here will determine not just your next life, but the very nature of your future consciousness. The text describes something extraordinary at this stage. Your consciousness, freed from physical form, experiences reality in its pure potential state. Every thought becomes like a seed, instantly sprouting into experience. Every emotion becomes a landscape. Every deep-seated tendency becomes a pathway drawing you toward your next incarnation. Modern physics tells us something remarkable that parallels these ancient insights. At the quantum level, reality exists as pure potential until it's observed. The Tibetan Book of the Dead suggests something similar about consciousness. In this state, your awareness moves through pure potential until your karmic tendencies cause reality to crystallize around you once again. Think about this. Every choice you've ever made, every kindness you've shown, every hurt you've caused. All of these create patterns in your consciousness. These patterns don't disappear when you die. Instead, they become like gravitational forces, drawing you toward experiences that match their frequency. This isn't punishment or reward. It's simply the law of cause and effect operating at the level of consciousness itself. But here's what makes this stage so crucial. Unlike in physical life, where changes happen slowly, in the bardo of becoming, transformation can happen in an instant. A single moment of recognition, a single choice made with clarity, can alter the entire trajectory of your future existence. The stakes couldn't be higher. The text describes specific signs that appear during this phase, signs that indicate which realm of existence you're being drawn toward. But these realms aren't just physical locations. They're states of consciousness. The human realm represents balance and opportunity. The God realm represents bliss and pride. The hungry ghost realm represents endless craving and dissatisfaction. Each one reflects a different way that consciousness can manifest. This understanding isn't just relevant after death. Look around you right now. Aren't these same states of consciousness visible in the world? Some people live in a constant state of conflict, others in endless pursuit of pleasure, still others trapped in cycles of addiction and craving. The Tibetan Book of the Dead is showing us that these aren't just metaphors. They're fundamental patterns of consciousness that shape both our lives and our deaths. Here's where this knowledge becomes transformative. You don't have to wait until death to work with these patterns. Every moment of awareness in your current life is an opportunity to reshape these tendencies. Every act of kindness creates patterns of positivity. Every moment of mindfulness strengthens your ability to remain aware during transitions. Every insight into the nature of your mind creates the causes for future liberation. But the text reveals something even more revolutionary. It is possible to break free from these cycles entirely. In the bardo of becoming, if you can maintain complete awareness, if you can see through the illusion of separate existence, liberation is possible. This isn't just spiritual theory. It's a practical possibility that the text describes in precise detail. As consciousness moves through this state, carrying the imprints of all past actions, a crucial moment approaches. The text describes it as a point of choice, though it's not a choice made with the ordinary thinking mind. It's a choice made by the deepest patterns of your consciousness. And what happens next will determine everything. But before we explore how this final transition occurs, you need to understand something vital about how to prepare for it. Because the Tibetan Book of the Dead isn't just describing these stages. It's offering specific practices that you can use right now to prepare for this extraordinary journey. What if I told you that every single day of your life contains miniature versions of the death process? Every time you fall asleep, every time you end a significant chapter in your life, every time you let go of an old identity, these are all small deaths, opportunities to practice for the ultimate transition. This is where the Tibetan Book of the Dead transforms from an ancient manual into a revolutionary guide for living. Think about how you feel in those moments just before sleep, when your thoughts begin to dissolve and your awareness starts to shift. The Tibetan masters recognize this daily experience as a precious opportunity to practice for the clear light of death. Every night, you have the chance to rehearse the most important moment of your existence. Here's a practice you can begin tonight. As you're falling asleep, try to maintain a gentle awareness of the transition. Notice how thoughts become distant, how your sense of body changes, how consciousness itself begins to shift. The text tells us that this simple practice, done consistently, creates neural pathways that will serve you in the ultimate moment of transition. Modern sleep research has discovered something fascinating that validates this ancient practice. During the transition to sleep, your brain produces the same theta waves observed in deep meditation. When you maintain awareness during this shift, you're literally training your brain to remain conscious during major transitions. This isn't just spiritual theory, it's neuroplasticity in action. But the teachings go even further. Remember those peaceful and wrathful deities we discussed? You're meeting their energies every day. That moment of pure compassion you feel, that's the energy of the peaceful deities. That flash of crystal clear insight that cuts through confusion, that's the wrathful deities in action. By recognizing these energies in daily life, you're preparing to recognize them in the Bardos. Carl Jung discovered something remarkable about this process. He found that when people consciously engage with these archetypal energies in life, through meditation, active imagination, or creative expression, they become more integrated, more whole. The same practices that prepare you for death actually make you more fully alive. Here's how to begin working with these teachings right now. Start by becoming aware of transitions in your daily life. Every time you move from one activity to another, every time your emotional state shifts, pause for a moment. Notice the space between the old and the new. This space, this gap, is a miniature bardo, a chance to practice remaining aware during change. The text offers another powerful practice called taking the bardos as the path. It starts with morning awareness. When you first wake up before getting out of bed, recognize that you've just returned from a journey similar to the death process. Take a moment to remember, consciousness continues even when ordinary perception stops. This simple recognition, repeated daily, builds confidence in the continuity of awareness. But here's where these practices become truly revolutionary. As you become more familiar with these transitions in life, something extraordinary begins to happen. Fear of death starts to dissolve, not through spiritual bypassing or denial, but through direct experience of consciousness's continuous nature. You begin to recognize that awareness itself never dies. It only transforms. The ancient masters left us these teachings because they understood something crucial. The way we live shapes the way we die, and the way we die shapes the way we'll live again. Every moment of awareness is creating patterns that will either bind us or free us. This isn't about believing in an afterlife. It's about working skillfully with consciousness itself. As we approach the end of our exploration, I want to offer you something powerful, a daily practice that brings together everything we've learned. Because what comes next could transform not just your understanding of death, but your entire experience of being alive. As we reach the end of our journey through the Tibetan Book of the Dead, take a moment to consider something profound. Every breath you've taken while watching this video has brought you closer to that ultimate moment of transition. But here's the extraordinary truth. That's not something to fear. Instead, it's an invitation to live with greater awareness, deeper purpose, and profound understanding of who you really are. We've discovered that death isn't the end of consciousness, but a transition into new states of awareness. We've learned that the clear light of pure consciousness shines not just at death, but in every moment of our lives. We've seen how modern science is beginning to validate what these ancient masters knew, that consciousness is far more vast and mysterious than we once believed. Think back to where we started, with that ancient manuscript hidden in the mountains of Tibet. What seemed like an exotic religious text has revealed itself as something far more universal. A precise map of consciousness itself, a guide not just for dying, but for living with complete awareness. These teachings aren't just theory. They're a direct path to transforming your daily experience of being alive. The Tibetan Book of the Dead challenges us to ask the most fundamental questions. Who are you beyond your thoughts and emotions? What continues when everything familiar falls away? These aren't just philosophical puzzles. They're practical questions that can transform how you experience every moment of your life. In our modern world, where anxiety about death and uncertainty seems to be at an all-time high, these teachings are more relevant than ever. They show us that by facing our mortality directly, by understanding the nature of consciousness itself, we can live with a freedom and peace that no external circumstance can disturb. But knowing about these teachings isn't enough. The Tibetan masters were clear. This wisdom must be practiced, experienced, integrated into your daily life. Every moment of awareness is precious. Every act of kindness creates patterns that will shape your journey through the Bardos. Every instant of clarity is a glimpse of the same clear light that appears at death. Here's what I invite you to do right now. Start with the simple practice we discussed. Tonight, as you're falling asleep, maintain gentle awareness of the transition. Notice how your consciousness shifts, how thoughts dissolve. This isn't just a meditation exercise. It's your first step in preparing for the most important journey you'll ever take. Share your experiences in the comments below. What insights from these teachings resonate most deeply with you? How has your understanding of death and life shifted after learning these ancient secrets? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to begin their own journey of discovery. And if you found this exploration valuable, you won't want to miss our next video, where we'll dive deep into the hidden practices of Tibetan dream yoga, ancient techniques for maintaining awareness, not just during death, but during dreams and every other state of consciousness. Remember, the Tibetan Book of the Dead isn't just about preparing for death. It's about waking up to the extraordinary reality of who you truly are. Every breath, every heartbeat, every moment of awareness is an opportunity to recognize the clear light of consciousness that never dies. So I ask you, are you ready to begin this journey? Are you ready to transform your understanding not just of death, but of life itself? The wisdom of the ages is calling. The only question is, will you answer? Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next exploration into these ancient mysteries. If this video touched something deep within you, share it with someone who needs to hear this wisdom. Together, we're uncovering truths that have the power to transform not just individual lives, but human consciousness itself. Until next time, remember, every moment contains the seeds of enlightenment. Stay curious, stay aware, and keep exploring the deepest mysteries of existence.